Hey there fellow creators, Ben here from Cinder Studios, and today it's everything you need to know about mixed media. Stick around. So I've had this idea of doing the everything you need to know about mixed media for quite a while, but I've been really hesitant to do it because mixed media means a lot of different things to a lot of different artists, collectors, and curators. But as somebody who works with a lot of different media in the first place, I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to talk about mixed media in terms of how it applies to the 2D visual arts. So that said, how can we really define mixed media? Well, let's start by saying that it's a very broad range of different disciplines in art. And for something to be considered mixed media, it has to use two or more different types of media on a single piece. That particular piece can be a 2D piece, a 3D piece, or a mix of both. But it's important to note that mixed media is not the same as multimedia. Multimedia usually involves some sort of technology or electronics, so think of something like an installation piece that uses maybe a TV as a backing. So mixed media, different types of drawing or painting, multimedia, art, and technology, or other things. Another reason why mixed media is kind of hard to talk about and define is because it's often very experimental. A mixed media piece of art is often some of this, and some of this, with not always the most intention. A lot of times going into a mixed media project, an artist is doing so in order to learn about a different media, not necessarily just grabbing stuff for the sake of grabbing stuff. But sometimes the latter is also true. In the process of learning different media through doing a mixed media project, yes, you can learn a bunch of stuff, and that's sort of the goal of the project, to learn the disciplines and learn how to layer them. Very in particular for a lot of mixed media stuff, it's learning how to layer things properly. And if you're not layering things properly, usually you end up with a bit of a mess. But at the end of the day, you end up learning something, so you can apply that to the next piece. What I find the most interesting about mixed media is that the term itself is kind of a personal preference in terms of its use, both for artists as well as, again, curators and collectors, because everyone kind of uses it a little bit differently. A lot of artists will simply just list off their media, especially if it's less than 4. So just like acrylic, marker, oil stick, and colored pencils. They'll just list them all off. I've actually seen some artists have some kind of fun with this. I was at a gallery show once, and the tag, because you could put whatever you want more or less as an artist, said acrylic, colored pencils, and Sharpie marker and magic was just how they listed their mediums. However, some galleries and venues will actually curate their works to be a little bit more specific. So simply saying mixed media sometimes isn't enough for everybody, and actually knowing what you used can be actually kind of more important than just saying mixed media. Overall though, when thinking about the term, if you're going to use it, make sure that you're using it in its proper place. So let's talk for a minute about some of my own work. I actually use the term mixed media to mean a lot of different things, and for different artists, again, it can mean anything from sort of like marker and ink to just two different types of paint. So different artists are going to use it very differently. The first type of work that kind of got me into mixed media was doing sort of layered work with watercolor or thinned out acrylic and some black ink. I've been doing these kind of works since about 2010. Really enjoy them. Talked about the artist Lawrence Yang from time to time here on this channel. He's the guy that got me into doing work like this. And it's the first kind of idea that and artists and process behind the whole thing that got me into saying the term mixed media, because it is just a mix of media. It's different things you wouldn't expect to go together in a piece, but they kind of work. Now, a while back on this channel, when I was still debating on whether or not to make this video, I did just a long demo of a mixed media painting, really from start to finish. In that particular piece, I started out by layering on some newspaper, attaching it to the piece, and then just adding really whatever I felt like putting on it in terms of media. I grabbed acrylic, I grabbed watercolor, I think there's some like colored pencil and oil pastel in there too. Honestly, can't really remember, it was a while ago. But it was a really fun project to do, and it's another good example of how mixed media can be applied to the same terminology. The same terminology can be applied to a piece, but be very, very different. There's of course also experimental pieces, the ones that maybe don't always make it out of your studio, the ones that are just kind of there because you're just putting stuff and slapping stuff on a piece of wood or canvas or slate or cardboard or whatever you happen to be working on, because that's just what you're doing. And sometimes you get a good piece out of it. And I do a lot of those projects. And I would say maybe about 25% of them actually come out worth showing. Some of them are there. And the last piece of sort of my own work that I guess you could kind of call mixed media is my recent blend of oil stick and acrylic pieces. They are, yes, still paintings, and I could just say oil and acrylic on canvas or slate in this case, which I actually usually do. But again, these pieces actually could be considered mixed media because they are a mix of media, as the name suggests. But generally speaking, again, personal preference in terms, I would actually think for just like two different types of paint, I think it's worth just saying the two different types of paint. But again, this is still classified as mixed media work. So what's the takeaway here? Well, as kind of our starting premise was, is that mixed media is actually kind of hard to define. You can describe it in simply terms of mixed disciplines, painting, drawing, three-dimensional work, mashing them all together, see what happens, or just individual different media, charcoal, ink, acrylic, oil, watercolor, oil pastel, chalk pastel, just everything all kind of smushed together, or whatever you happen to choose smushed together. It's kind of hard to define exactly where mixed media sits, but it's in general a term that artists use, and that people talking about art use, and that galleries might use. But it's important to understand that mixed media can mean a lot of different things, and it's not always the most defined and easy way to understand a piece. As with many of my suggestions in these videos, it's important to find a media you like. And maybe if you don't find one media you like, mixed media might be an option, because it's like, well, I like some of this, but I don't like maybe the drawing time of this, so I'll use this for the start of it and sit it on the side and let it dry. Meanwhile, I'm going to work on this one and apply some stuff to this. And sometimes mixed media and learning the different medias and learning the layering technique of mixed media, you can actually, in some ways, find the one you like better. So you can maybe find one media you like by doing mixed media, or you can just mix them all together because your media is mixed media. Actually, that probably didn't make a lot of sense, but we're going to go with that. In addition to trying media, try styles. Try a lot of different things. Again, mixed media is essentially mixing disciplines. And if you can do that more easily, you can actually pick up a new media, something you've never tried before, I think a lot easier than you might otherwise. So now that I've talked about mixed media for a few minutes, I'm actually now realizing that I probably should have researched this better and said something else, but I hope you actually did enjoy and learn something out of this. Mixed media is kind of hard to talk about, which is why I think doing this as an everything you need to know about is very, very difficult, because everything you need to know about mixed media is everything you need to know about all media, which is why this exists in the playlist of everything you need to know about. If you're unfamiliar with the rest of the videos in this series, I talk about acrylics, oils, watercolors, drawing inks, charcoal, graphite, and I feel like there's probably one other one in there that I'm forgetting. Every time I come across a media, I try it out, I work with it for a while, I get to know it, and then I make a video about it, hopefully. So if you want to hear more about different types of media to figure out which ones you can mix together, check out the rest of the playlist. You can see that in the description box below. Also in the description box you can find links to my own stuff, website, social links, where you can find and buy my art online, which is always really useful. So thanks guys for watching. Hit that like button to help support the channel. Comment, let me know what you think. Subscribe if you're not already. And this has been Cinderblock Studios. Keep on creating, and I will see you guys next time. Also, if you're still watching, thank you for keeping tuned in. I recently made this. It's a painted skateboard, recycled. Still kind of grippy on this side. I did this for a community group project with my art collective Red Fishbowl. You can actually go on the website right now and bid on this painting to try and get it for yourself. All proceeds benefit both me, the art collective, as well as some local businesses here in Pittsburgh that are struggling during the time of the coronavirus. So it's a really great cause to support, at least in terms of my local area, businesses and artists and everything like that. So I've linked the page to bid on this, or not bid on this, it's a raffle. It's a raffle. So buy a raffle ticket for whatever, $5 or $10. Nice low amount of money given in these trying times. And you get a chance to win this landscape on a skateboard. So please go ahead and check that link out if you're interested. Promised my art manager I'd plug it, so I figured, hey, let's do it this week.